Hello, it is Diane Cox here with my trusty little kitty Rufus, who has decided to come and join me for this lovely video. I'm talking about Saturn today, and I'm talking about specifically people's experience of when Saturn goes over the Ascendant and through the first house. Now, Saturn can be in a sign for about 2.5 years, depending on the retrogrades. And obviously, if you're using whole house signs, it means that Saturn will go through, this one sign for 2.5 years and then go into the next, whatever it's doing. So, but I don't use whole house signs. And I've asked a few of my friends about what they remember when Saturn went over their Ascendant and through their first house, to see if it correlates with what I would imagine that Saturn went through. Saturn would put you through, so to speak. Because let me start with this. Saturn has got a bit of a bad rap, The god Saturn, Saturnus, is kind of the more kind of strict aspects of Saturn get more, talk and exposure. And really Saturnus, Cronus in the Greek, Cronus, the father of time, cycles, the kind of the sitting of patience, being patient, being kind of not rushing in, doing the work, doing the kind of laying foundations. Saturnus in the Roman kind of pantheon was a god of, not only was he a god of time and kind of the everything that goes with time, he was also the god of wealth, abundance, agriculture, renewal, liberation, which I think all does come after putting in the hours and effort of anything. And then you get to the point, it's hard. You start anything, any new venture you start. It could be learning to ride a bike, it could be learning to drive, it could be learning, how to cook, it could be learning ceramics, it could be learning anything. You have to start small and get on with it, and then just keep repeating, and then in the end you get your rewards, okay, don't you? So Saturn, Saturnus, was very much associated with obviously the strictness, the disciplinarian, the get on with it, the as I say now, the coach. But it was that whole generation thing, that birth and death, rebirth, pregnancy, expectancy, and that can be ideas, a pregnancy of ideas, the expectancy of things coming about. Saturnus was known for dissolution, but then when there's dissolution, there's space to renew and therefore get to the end. I always think, so say in Babylonian times, Saturn was related to the god Ninurta, and Ninurta was known as a god of agriculture and healing. So you've got Saturn kind of held up as a planet of healing and agriculture. And I think using agriculture for Saturn is a really beneficial way to look at Saturn, because you have to till the land. In the old ways, they kind of dug the land. You've got your oxen, you've got your little plough thing, you go up and down and up and down. Hard work, hard yoke, hard responsibility. The word that defines Saturn, responsibility, taking responsibility, really kind of being there and being reliable and, being steadfast, being rational, being logical, being, non-emotional about things is a great way of looking at Saturn. Just seeing things in a calm, cool way, being, like I say, steadfast and being reliable. And so when you're thinking about agriculture, there's all that, I like to think of the hard way that they used to do it, with that pushy thing, whatever it was called, a pushy thing with ox. And then, it could be a freezing cold day, it could be in winter, depending on what needed planting and the phase of the moon and anything else like that. And so they went up and down. Then they had to put the seeds in, and then you have to cover it all up, and then you have to water. Make sure you've got good soil. Make sure you've rotated your crops right, and then see them grow. Make sure there's no pests. If there are pests, you have to deal with the pests and sort that out. And then hope they grow and they grow and they grow. And then, if there are pests, then it could be catastrophe for your crops. And then hopefully at the end of it, you get your crops, and you have to dig and dig and dig to get your crops. Back-breaking work to dig and pull your carrots out, or your Swedes, or your spuds or whatever. So I think agriculture is a really good kind of metaphor for Saturn, because it's hard. It's great to eat the food at the end of the day, but let's face it, it's hard. It's hard work, and you have to be patient, and there are cycles, and that's what Saturn is about, the cycles. And then after the cycle of this back-breaking, responsible, hard work, you get your veggies, your carrots, your cauliflowers, who knows what, and you get to eat and live and have a gorgeous, organic, beautiful diet, which is the wealth, the abundance. Food, good food is wealth, good food is abundance. So, and in Egypt, Saturn was related to the god Sobek, who was the god of the Nile. And again, that's fertility. It's the flood, the inundation. It's agriculture, it's growth, it's germination, back to pregnancy and expectancy and stuff. So Saturn is about maturing. It's about having experiences that make you mature, that make you kind of go, okay, especially like the Saturn return. So the Saturn return is when Saturn comes back to the place in your chart, in your birth chart, where it was when you were born. And that is a time of real, kind of big events I've found in my life when I look at people's Saturn returns. It can be your first experience of death, pets or people. It can be end of a job. It can be promotion. It can be a divorce or marriage. It can be the birth of a first child. It can be the loss of a child. It can be big events that are life-changing, because it kind of makes you go, okay, what do I want? Saturn goes, is this what you want? Or, it goes, this has happened, now how are you going to deal with it? It's kind of, this is the maturation process. This is how we grow. This is the back-breaking stuff. And then, let's just move on it and learn from it. I think that's the most important thing for me with Saturn, is learning from it, learning the lessons. When I've been through Saturn stuff, I'm like, oh, just quick as possible, just quick. What's the gem? It's kind of, through all this chaos, what is the gem here? Let me find the gem quickly as possible, and then run with that one. And so, like I say, we're looking today at when the Saturn goes across the Ascendant and through the first house, because the Ascendant is about the mask we wear, the filter that we put on when we go through society. It's about how people see us. It's people's first impressions of us. It's how we express ourselves, out in society. It's what we want people to know about us, okay? So, say you've got a lovely Libra Ascendant, and it's like, oh, this person's so lovely, and she's so beautiful, and she's so attractive, and she's so funny, and she's so diplomatic and debonair, and I love being with her, and she laughs a lot, and all that kind of stuff. Lovely, very nice, Libra Ascendant. And then in the background, when people really get to know her, she's got like Mars in Aries and Mercury in Aries, and she's like a fireball, kind of just hot to handle and very direct and blunt, and gets on with it, and can be a little bit kind of trading over stuff to get her own way. So this is why astrology is so rich. People often say to me, oh, what star sign do you think I am? I'm like, I don't know. I've got no idea. I'm not even going to try, because I might be seeing your ascendant, or you might have a stellium around your ascendant, or I might be getting the true you, or I might be getting the mask. So I'm always like, I don't know, don't make me guess, just tell me. And that's just kind of mind you, I do have a good knack for certain things, And that's like where Uranus is in people's charts. It's like, how mad are they? How wacky are they? How off the scale are they? Kind of stuff. And Pluto. Oh, I love dealing with Pluto, and I love seeing Pluto expressed in people. But anyway, we're talking about Saturn, and especially when, so the first house in astrology is, so you've got the Ascendant, then the first house. The Ascendant is the cusp of the first house, and then the first house is our identity. It's us, it's our bodies, it's our personalities, it's who we were born. It's who, no, let me get this right. It represents the role we were born to play in our childhood, in our families. I really like that way of looking at the Ascendant. It's like, okay, what role was I born to play in my family? And then it's about how we grow from the role that we were born into as a child into the adult. It's our personal evolving just through the first house, because the first house is that, it's birth. It's like, I am here. Okay, the first house for me, it's Aries, it's an Aries house, and it is ruled therefore by Mars, and so it's like, I'm here, and it's independence, it's kind of all that kind of Aryan Martian stuff, like when people talk about the first house, it's like, imagine a baby just come into the world like screaming, shouting, wanting what it wants. The Aryan way. I am an Aries, bearing in mind, with a lot of Pisces in my chart, so it's kind of that Aries kind of screaming for what you want, and totally egocentric, totally kind of like it's all about me, but obviously Aries is also leadership and pioneering and all that other stuff, but this first house is about the body, the identity, the character, the vitality, the ego. Okay, so it's interesting when Saturn goes over the first house, because it's going to do something to the ego, probably, and it's going to do something to maybe how people see you and how people relate to you. And so I think I've got 6 examples here of what certain friends of mine went through, and it's quite interesting to see. So now we've kind of looked at what Saturn is and what the Ascendant and the first house is. Let's put these things together and see how they kind of come out. If I can move Rufus's bum off my notes. So I'll start with myself. When Saturn went over my Ascendant and through my first house, like I said, it's about 2.5 years that Saturn stays in one sign. I suddenly had not suddenly, obviously, because it's Saturn putting some structure, I suddenly got this lovely jolt and boost from somewhere just to stop saying yes. I was a little bit of a pleaser. I would always say yes to people. Yes, I'll go to that party. Yes, I'll do that for you. Yes, I can be there. Yes, I'll give you a lift. And I got to that point where it was like, no, I'm actually not going to do that anymore. Through my own personal work and my own, the massive, how many workshops I've been on and inner work I've done and all that. And through that, it was like, okay, I've got to stop saying yes to people so much, because it's miffing me off. I'm getting a little bit frustrated by doing things I actually don't want to do and I don't actually enjoy. So I did start saying no to people, and no, I'm not going to do that now, so I can't give you a lift. And I love that thing that I discovered many years ago. It's like, no is a complete sentence, and you don't have to give a qualifier. You can just go no. You don't have to go no. I'm tied up. I've got all the. You're just like, no, I'm not going to do that. Don't want to do that. So that was one thing that started, and that really did have quite a big effect on people, because people think, you're a bit strange. They're like, oh, you've changed, or what's happened to you? It's like, I'm just thinking of myself actually for a bit, and enjoying what I want to do, and not being somewhere on a Saturday afternoon when I've got a million things to do. I actually do, and I'm at some party that is just like so out of my enjoyment or my arena. I really don't want to be there, and I don't want to be doing this, but now I've said yes, I've got to stop saying yes. So I did stop saying yes. That had quite a few profound effects on people. I started karate around then. I think it was around then. Shotokan karate. I did it for about 10 years. And of course, there's nothing more kind of Aryan Saturnic thing than kind of doing karate, is there? It's like 3 times a week, you know, strict discipline, body, you know, body fitness, really connecting with your body and kind of combat. I much prefer doing kata. I did not like doing kumite at all, but it's like not fighting. I just like to do the katas and their forms. Thank you very much. Don't make me hit anyone because it's not in me. But then you find out it is, and it's quite disturbing. I know that weirdly, just in the same period that Saturn was doing in this first house, I also started doing belly dancing. So I had like karate a few nights, and then I did belly dancing. Ended up in belly dancing classes with all bruises on me because, you know, and that's also, which was funny, but it was also about body. It's about, you know, standing in front of a mirror with these lovely costumes on, with this gorgeous music and sensuality, and getting in touch with your femininity and allowing yourself to move in kind of certain ways. And, you know, it was a very, and again, discipline, turning up. And belly dancing is a very physical thing. The inner core stuff is very physical. So that was quite a big deal. And that was that kind of, so that first house, body, discipline, karate, belly dancing, saying no to people, was quite an interesting kind of experience for my Saturn, of just being disciplined myself, discipline in saying no and all that kind of stuff, discipline in turning up for karate, discipline in turning up for belly dancing. And what's interesting, they do say with Saturn, when it goes over certain areas and, you know, other configurations, hobbies can become something that you end up doing as a living. Well, I didn't end up being a karate instructor, but I did become an instructor. And yes, Rufus, more cleaning. And I also did end up becoming a belly dance instructor as well, and performing and all that. So that was really interesting. So that was a very interesting time of being seen very differently, because belly dancing had a little bit of a weird, you know, kind of, because people just go, oh, ballet dancing, you're doing ballet. It's like, no, belly. It's like, I've got the belly for it, let's go for it. So, oh good, Rufus has moved, and so I can see my notes on my friends. Oh no, he's just lying down again. Oh, and if you try and move him, he's one of these cats that if you try and move him, he gets feisty. Yes, I can see you getting all feisty because I want to move my little pad, don't I? Hey, oh, look, he's going to go like... Anyway, let me get on to my next friend. So my friend, my Saturn was in Pisces when it went over the Ascendant, because I've got a Pisces Ascendant. So basically, my friend who's got a Cancerian Ascendant, when they had their Saturn kind of over the Ascendant and the first house, what I really loved about this story is that they had bought an old house that needed renovating. And that's just so funny. It's kind of so funny because obviously it's not really, you know, it's not your body or whatever, but I think the first house, your identity, who you are, your vitality, and you take on a house that needs renovating, and like totally renovating, you know, floors, windows, doors, stairs, the whole thing. And with the Ascendant being in Cancer, it's all about, you know, the home. And I thought that was really interesting. So there you have Saturn, Cancer, Moon, the home, nurturing emotions, and building a new home where you can feel safe and secure, like the crab at the back of the cave. They do like a little bit of safety and security, and you know, emotional that emotional security, feeling like you need like emotional security and nurturing and that whole kind of thing. So I thought that was really interesting. And at the same time, they moved jobs. So I think moving jobs is a really big thing, because again, it is about your Ascendant, how people see you, what people know about you. There's nothing more of your Ascendant than going to work and being your Ascendant at work. You know, this is the mask I wear. This is the special suit I wear when I go out. This is the filter that I wear. This is the whole thing. You know, this is my ascendant you're seeing. Okay, and that really is at work, isn't it? That is a very big thing about changing jobs, because that is, again, responsibility. It's all the things that Saturn is all about. It's kind of getting down to it, and again, that repetition, the discipline, moving jobs and all that kind of stuff. I'm just going to see if I can slide these notes out of Rufus's elbow. Anyway, let's just, is he going to have a little... Anyway, so so that I thought was very interesting, and like I said, just starting a new home, new foundations, and you'd think it would be like a fourth house thing when Saturn went through the fourth house, and I know that this friend, the renovations went on for many years, so but that's when it started. You know, that was the initiation of the new foundations. Okay, so let's go on to my next friend, who's... Let me just see if I can get... Oh, there we go. Sorry, Rufus. Oh, there's a fly now, so that's far more interesting. So my next friend had Saturn Libra. So there's they've got a Libra ascendant. So you're already thinking about relationships and one-to-ones. Again, it's Venus, it's kind of beauty, it's kind of diplomacy and how you're relating, and, you know, all kinds of other stuff regarding the 7th house and Venus itself. So this friend of mine also moved house during this time when Saturn was on the ascendant and going through the first house, also moved house. So my first friend that I spoke about was renovating a house. This friend of mine moved house. So that is very interesting. And what I love here, she moved house because there was a necessity to basically have more of her own space. It was a nice thing. There was good things going on in her life, and she just wanted that self-expression and to grow into herself, and, you know, that Saturnic thing about, you know, just kind of taking responsibility, and like, I need something different, I need something bigger, I need something where I can breathe and, you know, to put more of my stuff out, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So another interesting thing about moving house, again, not in the 4th house like you might expect, but that's when the change started. That is when the kind of what a word that's often used with Saturn is dissolution. A maturity started, a whole new cycle started, and this whole thing about Saturn and cycles and Kronos and beginnings and endings. I had beginnings and endings. My first friend had the cycle of a job, ending of one job, starting of another, and the whole reconstruction. The whole reconstruction thing is absolutely fascinating. And this friend of mine, the second friend I'm talking about, had a fantastic thing about, and I thought this was brilliant. So she had an occasion, a nice occasion. So her sister got married, and her sister got married in America. And so this friend I'm talking about with a Libra ascendant facilitated the whole organising of her mum getting to the wedding, looking after her mum while they were travelling, at the wedding, to and from the wedding, clothing, wedding, makeup, wedding, hair, wedding, while supporting sister wedding, friends, and just being the total go-to kind of total responsible, reliable, calm-headed person that everyone would kind of turn to. I thought that was just a classic. It's like, wow, that is a really big thing, and it's a nice thing. It's a Libran thing. Weddings, loveliness, you know, traveling and kind of looking beautiful. I thought it was really, really funny. Lots of responsibility, and lots of nice things. The nice things of Saturn: the abundance, the wealth, the growth, and again a cycle. The ending of a cycle for her sister, observing all that, supporting all that. And then she also had at work a kind of a cyclical thing of having an HR issue that things were kind of great and then they weren't great, and the ending and considering moving on and changing jobs, that kind of thing again. That really interesting thing, changing jobs and moving on, and kind of the end, the cycles of life move on. Time moves on. Saturn and time, it's a whole time for this and time for that, and it's absolutely fascinating, isn't it? So that was kind of her experience. And then I've got a friend here who this is I really love the examples I got here, because Saturn is related to time and cycles, it is related to death. Saturn is often related to a natural death, whereas Mars is normally related to a kind of unexpected type of death, or accidental death, that kind of thing. But this friend of mine had an experience during, this is a Scorpio, so think of that as, again, it's kind of funny, but it's kind of obviously not funny. But this friend of mine was like Pluto Ascendant, Scorpio Ascendant. So Scorpio Ascendant, so Saturn's going over a Scorpio Ascendant, Pluto, and their father-in-law died. And that's like, wow, that is kind of, Pluto, the whole kind of, death, rebirth, Saturn, death, rebirth cycles. Absolutely fascinating. And they ended up at a funeral on Christmas Eve when Saturn was on their ascendant, just going into the first house. And there's nothing kind of more of the dark Saturnic stuff than that, is there, being at a funeral on Christmas Eve. There's nothing more inverted than the normal jolliness of Christmas Eve, families getting together, and then your father-in-law has died, and Pluto, Saturn, and that end of that cycle done, that kind of stuff. So I thought that was actually you just couldn't make it up. It was just so on the nail, that kind of experience. And that, just after that experience, this friend of mine moved houses again. So this whole moving house thing, Saturn over the ascendant, first house, moving house, moving, whole different cycle starts. Very interesting. Again, not in the fourth house, it's in the first house when it all happens. So a big move, big change, this maturation thing that I keep going on about, maturing, pivotal life experiences where, and you know what it's like when you move house, you have so many memories, that you build in one place. And then you take it all, and then you kind of have to drop something and leave stuff behind, and then move on into the new. And that is, again, like the agriculture idea that we came across before. You have to get the house ready, you have to till the soil, you have to plough, you have to look for a home, you have to get into it, you have to, put your head down and see what you want. And it's money, it's the structure of life, isn't it? That whole money thing, and Saturn, and look for a home, and then you have to kind of pay for the home and get the finances for a home. You have to be organised. You have to get your stuff together, your act together, in order to buy a home. While Saturn is like mooching over your, your ascendant and your first house. So that's very interesting. So this friend of mine also moved house, and this friend of mine was in a divorce situation, which again, end of a cycle, end of how people see you with your ascendant. Oh, they're not married anymore, what happened there? There's all that kind of stuff that people have this idea about, oh, what happened? Why have they got divorced? What went on there? And then all the kind of little moochings that go on. And you know what happens when you get divorced? Well, I don't, because I've never been married, but I've seen it enough times. But it's that kind of that degraded kind of personality. It's a bit like death, isn't it? When people die and everyone's like suddenly like mad about the will and what they can get. There's something weird happens with grief. I always think in death and what people, how they behave. And I think it's the same with divorce. That either people are immature about it or they're not. They fight and scream and are very nasty to each other, or they act like grown-ups and just tell their kids, we just don't love each other anymore, we see life differently, and we love you still, little children, but we're just going to go our own ways, you'll still see us. But I've seen the most hideous divorce things, I'm sure you all have as well, that people turn into the most ugliest, vile things. I think that's, if I'm using the agriculture analogy and metaphor, basically that must be when you get a pest in the crop and the crop all goes, haywire and doesn't survive, that kind of stuff, and then it all has to start again. So yeah, this friend of mine went through a divorce and had a very controlling opposition from the other side. It wasn't just like, okay, this is this, half, there you go. It was like full on reins, pulling the reins, get the lasso out, get it round the neck and try and, I know it's all hurt when people are hurt and they don't know what to do and they're afraid, all that kind of stuff, but people get very ugly, don't they? So that was that friend, the death, the funeral, Christmas Eve, the moving house, the big divorce, and controlling people around. I mean, that is Saturn to the T. That's Saturn, and that regarding a Scorpio ascendant, control, power. Saturn and control and power, controlling people, experiencing controlling people. People who are a bit power mad, and that of course can be the person themselves. They can suddenly get into a situation where they feel they need to really get control of themselves or control of the situation, but it's over control with Saturn. It's like okay, calm down, it's all going to be all right, just stop it. I see the pigeons out here when I feed them with corn, and they just go mental, flapping their wings and pecking each other. It's like the food is spread all over, the place, so they don't have to interact. But there's one pigeon in particular, and it runs around just stopping everyone else eating. I must get a video of it one day. It just runs around pecking all the other pigeons so they can't eat, and they have to fly off. It doesn't eat itself. It just stops everybody else eating. That must be a Saturnic type of person. Or a pigeon psychopath, one of the two. Okay, let me go on to my next friend. And this is a great, I think this is really great. So starting with the body, this friend of mine began the perimenopause. She'd got Saturn in Sag, okay, so the perimenopause, so that's the body, the ascendant, the vitality, how you're feeling, how you're experiencing your body, and again, how you're presenting to the outside world, because when you're menopausal, it does affect how you interact with the outside world, because there's so much kind of taboo and expectation from women, to be forever young and forever fertile and forever maiden-like. The crone years are not normally kind of hugely embraced and celebrated by society. The crone years, the best years of our lives, are totally, I think, feared by a lot of people, because it's when women start going, oh fuck you, I don't care what you think, off you go, whatever, and women can get very, very, because they've got nothing to lose. So anyway, this friend went through, started her kind of menopause, and then you kind of, with that menopause, you get that, like I said, that interface. She was saying she had a lot of anger going around at that point in her life, and which I think all the hormones do. It brings up all kinds of stuff, and all the all that's going on in the body. So that was really a really good a good kind of, because it's really good collating of information, isn't it, for me as an astrologer? It's like, okay, I get that. Saturn and the body, and then the menopause. End of a cycle, end of this cycle. You're being told that your cycle is ending. You're coming to the end of those fertile years into the next phase of all the other fertility that goes on, that's just not centered around the womb. but around the skill and the experience and masses of years of everything you've got to offer. So it's an end of a cycle. She also said she lost a lot of weight, which is interesting, especially when you think of Saturn being restricting and constricting and limiting. That is an interesting thing for her to have experienced, that body right over the ascendant, right in the first house of vitality in the body, that she lost a lot of weight. And this is just great. I love this. And it's when she started a PhD. So you can't get anything, again, more... I hear people, I've heard so many people talk about doing their PhD and how it like took a part of their soul. It's kind of, it just like takes something. It's so demanding. It's so specific to every comma and semicolon and full stop and every spelling, every grammatical thing, let alone the content and, you know, aligning with what your particular PhD, you know, mentor thinks you should say, and then the research, having to do hours and hours and hours and months of research, and then, you know, getting your idea. Talk about fertile, and again, the sowing of the seeds and the growing of the PhD, you know, before you can actually reap the rewards. How many people have I heard just go, oh, I can't do it. I've got like, you know, a year and a half through and I just can't do it. And it's like, of course you can do it, you know, that's what you're made for because you started it. But I just like, it's just like, I've seen so many people just like almost be taken down by doing a PhD. But they get it, and she did get it, but it's like so Saturnic. It's like that whole kind of, and again, I'm sure people, you know, start their PhDs maybe when they haven't got Saturn going through their first house. But I'd be very interested to do some like research on that. But there she was, you know, all the research, the yoke of responsibility, and you know, perimenopausal, PhD, losing weight, kind of family to kind of consider, work to consider. That is a hell of a lot of responsibility. You know, there's a big responsibility there. So I really loved that. The first year, then she started a PhD. It's like, wow. Writing, reading, writing, put it in the bin, delete it, read, write, delete it. It's kind of, wish you'd never started, you know, cry a lot. It's kind of, shouldn't laugh. I've never done one. And after seeing, I wouldn't ever do one, but yeah, after seeing people and what it does to people. But I'm sure highly, you know, it's like picking your crop at the end, you know, and you get your little book and there's your name and a little book, and there you go. All that hard work was worth it. Okay, and the last example I'm going to use is an older lady. Sorry, my friend I was just talking about them with the menopause, it's Sagittarius Ascendant, and this next friend, Sagittarius Ascendant. The biggest thing I thought here, this was a more mature lady, and I thought there's two things really interesting here. So during this time, this lady spent a lot of time with her son, who doesn't live nearby her, and they were doing this project together of cataloguing all of these kinds of you know, things that needed labelling, and you know, just kind of putting in boxes and sealing up, you know, for old who knows what, you know, gathering collections and whatever. And I thought, wow, that's amazing, because so she had her son come far more frequently than he normally did, and they sat in a room together for you know, quite a few weekends, many weekends, cataloguing. Is that nothing more Saturnic than that? Getting all these little objects and writing them all down, and then writing them on a little spreadsheet, wrapping them up, putting them in a box, and you know, organising, absolute organisation to the T. It's absolutely fascinating. So many weekends of structure, organising, cataloguing, spreadsheeting, boxing things up, getting things that were like chaos and scattered into orderly boxes, wrapped up nicely, labelled, all sorted. I thought that was just brilliant. And it went on for, I think the weekends were, I think it must have gone on for maybe 8 months. I don't know, actually, I should really check. So I thought that was brilliant because, again, it was her identity as the mother, spending time with this kind of son. I don't know about the cycles here. The cycles, maybe it's like because of the cycles of her son not being able to be around too much, living, like a flight away. It's not just like a few miles, it was like a flight away. And then him making the effort to go and then doing this stuff together. Maybe it's like the cycle of just getting the chaos into order, just all this stuff that had been hanging around into like an orderly fashion. The cycle that I can see in this friend's Saturn over the Ascendant and first house was that she was always involved in like in the church as a treasurer, always helping people getting organised, always, banking, all that. She was like really super responsible and really hyper efficient at everything that she did. And then she resigned as the treasurer of this job, and it was like over a few, something not like a little tiny thing. It was like a really big over. These churches went over a few places, and that was a big end of cycle for her, because she was someone who still is, she's more retired now, but someone who took on a lot of responsibility. Everyone always asked her to do stuff because she was so efficient at it, and she really did take that. This is also a Sagittarius, so Sagittarians always want to help, always want to be of assistance, and do what they can, and then so that was an interesting thing for her, Saturn, over herself, her body. I suppose the releasing of the yoke, it's like the crops. It's like having the crops and you've eaten them, and now you can just forget that. Well, they're still growing outside. And she had a brilliant reputation, still does have a brilliant reputation as a kind of PA, office worker, treasurer, person who can, just get things organised. So, and that was a very interesting thing for her. And Rufus has just got on the table again and now sat on those notes. There was something else. I mean, she also sent me a few moments she had when this was going over her ascendant and her first house, of making new friends. And also my other friend who had a Sagittarius, the lady that lost the weight and had the menopause, also made some good new friends whilst this was happening. And the lady who was very well organised and retired as a treasurer, she said she had some great times during that Saturn period of, going out with friends, and as in game drives and real kind of memorable moments that, are really etched in the memory. And that was all very interesting. So, it looks like Rufus has decided I've said enough. You could go on for hours about, these examples. And I think, me being me, because I've got this type of mind, I was like, well, I could argue that, because maybe that would go on if it was going over their midheaven, or, through, some other aspect of their chart. But I just thought I'd share it with you as an interesting mode. And also this, I think, important thing. It's important for me as well to remember this when talking about Saturn, about the good things, about how Saturn was always related to healing in the Babylonian times, and the agriculture, and the wealth and the abundance and the renewal and the liberation, of when you've been. So I think of my friend with a PhD, that whole cycle the hard back-breaking work, you know, of like planting, tilling, dragging this plough thing through the soil, trying to get the research done and trying to make sense of what's been gone before, what you want to say, and then the hours and hours of writing it and then rewriting it and rewriting it and rewriting it, and then, you know, the renewal when you keep rewriting it and you keep rewriting it and refreshing it and rewriting it, and then you get the liberation when you get your PhD at the end. So that's my little chat on Saturn and Saturn going over the Ascendant. If you have any very interesting experience of it, do say. There's any cycles that you now go, oh yeah, right, that happened in that era of my life, and that happened, okay, and that happened to my body, or people changed how they saw me, and people changed, you know, or my vitality changed. I had to kind of look after my vitality and look after, you know, my habits to keep my vitality up. So yeah, if you've got anything interesting that happened when Saturn went over your Ascendant and your first house, please do let me know, because I'm fascinated in it. It'd be really interesting, wouldn't it, to go through like Saturn through the houses, like what actually happened, not what could happen. We, you know, if you do astrology, you know what would happen if it went over the second house. Saturn in the second house of money, finances, and how you spend, your spending habits, your assets, you know, how you make your money. Saturn going through all that restructuring and making you mature about money and how you earn it and how you spend it. And this first house is the same, you know, it's how it restructures you, your identity, your personality, how it restructures your body, how it restructures how people see you. And so, yeah, I probably said it all now. Well, knowing me, I could go on and on and on, but let's leave it there. And thank you so much for watching. And if you have, like I said, anything to add, even about Saturn itself, then do fire away in the comments below. And thank you so much for watching, and I will be back soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.